Welcome. We're glad to have you all with us for today's Create webinar on the ACE Apprenticeship Network that IREC is hosting. Just a word here at the beginning, we're going to mute the pictures and the audio for people watching while we do the presentation, but we'll be happy to have questions at the end, and you can unmute yourselves at that point. Create, the National Energy Center funded by the National Science Foundation, is hosting this webinar. We have all of our previous webinars on our website, the createenergy.org website. You can see all of our previous webinars as well as upcoming events that we have coming up through the rest of this summer, starting with Women in Energy panel that's coming up later on this month. That's exciting. It's a new outreach that we're beginning with a number of women in various areas in the energy field, talking about their experiences and how they managed to get to the place that they are. So I'm looking forward to that one. We also have some face-to-face workshops as well as a virtual workshop on solar coming up beginning next month, and then the face-to-face workshops this summer. You can see the details and apply to those again on the website. We do regularly have a coffee hour for faculty. Faculty often feel isolated, and so by having a virtual coffee hour, we can get together and chat about the things that we do and are trying to do. And the topic for this upcoming coffee hour in April is recruitment, student recruitment, something that many of us are concerned about. We also will have webinars coming up throughout the month of April, short ones based on various topics that faculty have submitted that they are doing differently, or things that we think you all will be interested in. So a whole series of them coming up throughout April, just 30 minutes long each. Again, take a look at the website if you need to see more about those details. Today we have Richard Lawrence from IREC, the Interstate Renewable Energy Council. He is a senior director for workforce and industry engagement, leads the Solar Ready Vets Network, which is a Department of Energy initiative, as well as a Department of Labor funded network called Apprenticeships in Clean Energy, which is the topic for today. It's a topic that's close to my heart, being a former apprentice myself, as well as continuing to teach apprentices in the electrical industry. And many of us are interested in this topic, as we know that there are subsidies, there's funding opportunities for contractors that employ apprentices doing renewable energy work. So Rich is at the forefront of that, and will tell us about what's going on with the ACE network, and then we can add and think about other questions that we have. Rich, I'll let you take it away.
Okay, let's see if I can successfully share. My option's not here, so I'm not sure this is going to work. Let's try. All right. If this doesn't work, we'll try one other thing. Okay, are you seeing the full screen? Joel, can you confirm that? No. Are you seeing the speaker slides?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Let me switch. I know what it's doing now, and I think I can make this work. Let's see. I don't know why. Okay.
Yes, that's good.
There we go. All right. Thank you for having me, and I'm pleased to be presenting to the Create Network. Big supporter and help the network on their as a part of their visiting committee for the award. And so really pleased with all the work we're doing with this network, and happy to introduce the Apprenticeships in Clean Energy Network to you, the ACE network. Okay, so first I have to give you the disclaimer. This is a project funded by primarily Department of Labor at this point, but we do also do a fair amount of apprenticeship work for the Department of Energy as it comes to solar technologies. So same disclaimer for them. Contract number. So any of the views I say here do not represent the federal government, even though I work for them as a contractor. So I do work for IREC, the Interstate Renewable Energy Council. IREC is a nonprofit organization. We operate nationally, remote locations all across the country, and operate primarily in the space of workforce development, which is where I work. Also do a lot in the regulatory space. So you may see some of our reports and studies and intervenings that we engage with there on net metering and interconnection and things like that. And then we also do some local initiatives like our SolSmart program and resiliency work in Puerto Rico and a lot of other activities. So lots of resources on the IREC website for educators and all kinds of other stakeholders in the industry. Definitely check us out, irecusa.org. Want to start off, I know most people on this call through the Create Network are aware of this, but we are in an energy transition right now in the United States, and it's happening very quickly. If the information you have about clean energy is more than 2 years old, it is out of date at this point. Things are changing very quickly, and more quickly than many have expected, as we'll see. A couple of the pictures here show the growth of clean energy in the electricity sector. On the left-hand side, you see the annual additions of new electric generating capacity. And you can see since 2010, when you have a small little bar of yellow there at the bottom, less than 5% of new power generated in 2010 was from solar. When you had a fair amount of wind at that point, that next bar up, about 20% of wind capacity. So it's pretty strong wind growth back then, but lots of natural gas power plants being built for really the last decade and more. Natural gas is what's largely taken over other sources of energy. But in the last few years, you're starting to see, well, last decade, solar has definitely increased substantially to where actually this last year, 2022, you're almost there, but in 2023, the numbers just came in. Over half of all new power generated in the country was all new power plants built were solar. And when you add energy storage and wind and others, it's well over 90% of all new electric generation last year was in the renewable energy space. And that is projected to continue into the future with the Inflation Reduction Act and other programs that are in place, and just the economics of these technologies. The chart on the right shows some work done by Lawrence Berkeley National Labs around the interconnection queues. So what these are is the power plants that have been proposed into the power grid. It does take some time to build new power plants, and you have to go through a permitting process and interconnection process. This is the plants that have been proposed for interconnection. You can see back in 2010, just a little over 10 years ago, most of the plants, so it shows you the installed capacity at that time. So the grid was predominantly natural gas, coal, with obviously your base power of nuclear, hydro, and some others there. And then what was in the queue to be built, as we can see on the left of what was built, was some solar projects. Some wind. Wind was kind of the dominating source at that point. A little bit of gas still was being proposed to be built. So this 15 years ago, what was proposed, what people were planning to build at that point. Well, you can see, over 10 years later, what the grid looks like today is, still largely dominated by gas and coal, with that base power of nuclear and hydro. Coal has shrunk. Gas has grown substantially to make up that loss. But wind and solar have a significant fraction now of the power generation on the grid. But really the important is that last column there is what is coming, what is in the queue today, what is being planned to be built over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. This is what's going to be built. If you want to look at where the jobs are in the energy sector, the electricity generation sector, they are almost entirely in solar, in wind, and in energy storage. By far, exceed any other generation source being proposed to be built in the next, decade. So this is where the jobs are. This is what is coming. This is what's coming down the pipe. Now, not all that's going to be built, obviously, but you can also see that what's being proposed right now on the grid, if you total up the solar and storage projects that are being proposed to be built currently at this time, that have applications pending, it exceeds the total current capacity of the entire electric grid in just the solar and storage projects being proposed to be built right now. So, not the majority of those won't be built. We'll go to, probably only about 20% maybe will be built. But again, that's all that's being proposed. So we expect that trend to continue. This is happening in electric vehicles as well. Things happening much more quickly here than many, even, say, including myself that have been in this industry for over 20 years. That the rate at which the electric vehicles are being adopted, and not just by consumers, this is by the manufacturers of those vehicles and others in that industry are really driving this, and certainly support with government incentives and other things there. But consumers are driving this as well, obviously. The sales of EV vehicles are increasing rapidly. And that market share is approaching 10% of new sales today. And again, every year, those projections of what will look like into the future. The chart at the right there shows projections, the purple line at the bottom in 2018, the projections in 2020, the projections in 2021 are in green, and 2022 are in pink. And so you can see every year there that we proceed in the recent past, those projections of how quickly things are going to transition is accelerating and getting onto a steeper curve there. We're seeing this across other sectors as well. Just saw a report that over half of new HVAC components being installed today are heat pumps. Again, a very rapid transition into a new technology in that sector. So we've done this before. You can see from these two pictures here, downtown New York City, same spot on Fifth Avenue in 1900. And the question is, where is the car? And the red circle there shows you that car in 1900. Everything else here is horse-drawn carriages, right? And you can think about interesting reads, what it was like to live in a city like this at that time when there were so many horses around. So interesting jobs that were around there at that time, taking care of those horses, growing the crops for them. Cleaning up the waste was a big issue. And then just a handful of years later, just a little over 10 years later here, we see that same street, and it is there is a horse in there somewhere. I believe it's kind of in the center on the right over towards the sidewalk, but it's hard to see with all of the cars there. And you can imagine this transition from that workforce perspective and think about the analogies to the current situation that we have now. And just good thing to think about there, that we've done this before, we can do it again. We are doing it again today, and this group here is playing a small part in that transition in helping to prepare the workforce for these new jobs and to retool and retrain the workers in those existing industries to work into the new industries that are coming. So the Apprenticeships in Clean Energy Network is a coalition of a number of organizations, including Create, here helping to move forward registered apprenticeships as a method of training the workforce to meet these jobs of today and of tomorrow. We've got ourselves, IREC, that leads the project. We work closely with a number of trade associations. Our focus is with this SEIA, the Solar Energy Industries Association, representing the solar and storage industries. They have over 1,200 member companies, representing probably about a quarter of the total industry in those companies. The Building Performance Association is a group of over 10,000 contractors in the home performance industry all across the country. And then also, I'll add the Renewables Forward is another trade group that is focused on increasing diversity across the renewable energy industry. And lastly, we're also working with Arkansas Advanced Energy Foundation in the state of Arkansas. A lot of apprenticeship work is done at the state level, and we're doing a lot of work in Arkansas to model those programs that can then be deployed across the country. So it does start with the employers. Those are the people that are hiring the jobs. So we've got great networks there to connect into those employers to find what their needs are, and we're doing a lot of outreach to them. Through this, we're also working with a number of organizations that are into the workforce system, into the education system, to connect all of the parts. Apprenticeships work great with these partnerships. So we're working with the Service Year Alliance on recruitment strategies for diverse candidates, getting them interested in these pathways and these career options, and making those connections into the apprenticeship programs, helping develop some pre-apprenticeship training options while individuals are doing their year of service through various programs. The workforce boards are connecting us to those local agencies that have the funding and resources available, can develop those partnerships and have the connections with the schools, with the government agencies to make these projects work. And then the Clean Energy Initiative of the HBCU programs. So we can do outreach to education networks and attract diverse candidates and deliver the training through those institutions as well. And of course, the Association of Workforce Boards. Oh, I said, lastly, IWSI America is a partner that we're working with that has extensive apprenticeship expertise and can help provide that technical assistance. So as a network, the Apprenticeships in Clean Energy Network has kind of three main areas of our focus. First is outreach and engagement. So conducting sessions like this to raise awareness about registered apprenticeships and how to make those work for the different stakeholders involved. Lots of technical support then to actually assist with the development of new programs and the recruiting of candidates and obtaining funding, just navigating the system and getting programs up and running. We do also have some limited financial incentives available to support primarily employers, but that funding often is used to pay for that training that they do need to deliver. So we do have some limited financial incentives available through our project, but also to get those, we need to make sure we're leveraging the other resources that are out there. So we make sure to check in what other funding is available. And from the education network, that is often where a lot of the funding goes. And happy to work with anybody to identify those. Many states will pay for apprenticeship training through various vehicles that they have. And often that is connected into the community college system or other education systems supported through the state. So it's just what are apprenticeships? I think we're, broadly, most people are broadly familiar with what an apprenticeship is. And at the heart of it, an apprenticeship is really, just a really time-honored and tested tool for developing a new workforce, training somebody in an occupation through a combination of hands-on skills, learning on the job under the supervision of a skilled mentor is important. We'll get into some of these in detail here, but apprenticeship in general is just learning a trade from somebody who already knows how to do it by doing it on the job with them. progressively advancing as you learn more and more skills. Apprenticeships also would involve additional related classroom type instruction to address the theory and concepts involved to make sure that you can then apply those into the field. So apprenticeships have been around, literally forever. To learn any new occupation, I mean, you go back and look at the old, even all the way back to hunter-gatherer society. The way you learned how to do that was going out and hunting and learning with your, somebody who knew how to do that, an experienced person. Same with farming, same with any of those other occupations that were, just literally as old as humanity itself. This model has been used to train people. A registered apprenticeship, however, is one that is meets the requirements of the federal government with regard to these training programs. So, but they are ultimately customizable options for training to meet the employer needs and address those skilled workforce challenges that they have. So key solution, it is one tool in the toolkit, but one that we are certainly very excited about, and aligns a lot with what IREC has done over the years to promote standardization, to promote quality and high road pathways into this industry. So apprenticeships, we're often familiar with them in the United States around the construction trades, and certainly that's still where the majority of apprentices are. But I do want to make sure it's clear to everybody that you really can train somebody in almost any occupation. We'll get a little bit more into what it needs to be an occupation that you can train through an apprenticeship. But you can do that across the board in all kinds of industries. Obviously, we're focused on clean energy here, but it's not just the construction side that you can train somebody in. Apprenticeships are growing in the education industry. They're growing in healthcare and in IT and in manufacturing, all kinds of other sectors. This model can be applied to. There's over 1,000 occupations that have been approved by the Department of Labor to train apprentices. So while a lot of this is still in the construction trades, there are a lot of other opportunities to look at options in other non-construction related roles too, in that sales process, the design, the development, IT services, and all kinds of roles. So as you said, a registered apprenticeship is a program that's meets the standards of the federal government. Important thing about a apprenticeship is that it does issue this nationally recognized credential by the Department of Labor that says that this person has been trained in this particular occupation. And in that, it is very similar to a college degree, but it's one that is, the field of study is more typically learned through on-the-job training rather than classroom. Obviously, there's some classroom training, but it's just like some college programs might have an experiential component of an internship or some type of work study program while they're doing their education. Apprenticeships are kind of the other way around. So it's predominantly learning in the field, and then you do some classwork to supplement that. But again, in many ways, it's similar to a college degree in that you also would have sometimes different levels of apprenticeship. Apprenticeships can take typically anywhere from 1 to 5 years. They do need to be at least 1 year. And in that there's some occupations that you can learn in a year or two, and then do that occupation for the rest of your career, or advanced potentially into another role after some time doing that job. And there's others like electricians and other highly skilled occupations that take more like 4 to 5 years to become a really competent practitioner in that field. And that would be similar to college degrees in that some to really understand that field, you have to go into a bachelor's program or a master's program. They're not going to offer a 1 year or 2 year associate degree in some more advanced positions to prepare you for. So many ways, apprenticeships are like that as well. Some occupations you can learn quickly, and some occupations are, going to take a lot longer. There's a lot more skills involved, and that's going to be based again around that occupation. So key components, go through quickly. They are industry led. They're ultimately driven by employer needs for those skilled workers. And obviously the employer also has to be doing that on the job training. You cannot have an apprenticeship without an employer and some who has hired the apprentice as an employee. With that, an apprentice is a paid job. They are employees. They're not interns, or they're not, you can't do it as a volunteer work. You can't do it just as a student while you often are a student at the same time. You do need to be an employee to be an apprentice, working for a company, learning from them. You also progress, you advance your pay as you learn more in the apprenticeship program. Every apprentice is going to have a schedule of advancement as they complete their coursework and learn things in the field. So you do have that structured on-the-job training we talked about under the supervision of a mentor that knows what they're doing, knows how to do things correctly, and then is able to supervise you and make sure that you learn it and can do it properly as well. As we said, does need supplemental education. Any registered apprenticeship program requires a minimum of 144 hours of related instruction to be provided every year of the apprenticeship program. So can be more than that. Often, sometimes it is a little more than that. So for round numbers, you can look at 150 hours a year to do some quick calculations on there. So a 2 or 3 or 4 year program, you can do the math and see how much classroom training that apprentice is going to have to complete during that apprenticeship. And as educators, you're the key vehicle for delivering that classroom training. Apprenticeships are very much based on expanding diversity. The regulations that are in place make sure that every employer participating signs an equal opportunity employment pledge, that they have dispute and complaint resolution processes that will go up to the Department of Labor if there are any issues around discrimination and harassment, and make sure that safety, in this is taught in the standards, so that there's a job place safety is of critical importance in the apprenticeship system, and any program will make sure that that's a key component of the training that's provided. As we said, they offer a nationally recognized credential when you complete that program. Again, in many ways similar to a college degree. You say, hey, I completed a training program in this profession. And then often they will incorporate other industry certifications within those programs too. So the example is a program out in Oregon that is in a renewable energy technician program. And that requires completing the NABCEP installation exam in order to graduate from that program. But certainly others like OSHA, a Building Performance Institute, or depending on the industry, there's going to be some certifications and credentials that might fit within that training. There's lots of benefits for apprenticeships, that system of training, certainly for the employers and those employees. In terms of, you do have a productive employee who is doing work while they're learning, while they're being paid to do that work. But so you do get productive work out of them, but you also, by making sure that you're training them properly, those workers are going to be more productive than others who've not been trained, right? And certainly can customize that training to meet the local needs. A big thing we're seeing from employers is the retention, that recruitment and retention. So, the majority of employers in the industry present that they are having difficulty in hiring and finding the people that have the skills and training that they need. And that when the employer does contribute, when the employee sees that their employer is contributing to their learning, to their advancement, you end up first of all, being able to recruit candidates into these programs that are looking for these jobs, and then also retain them. They see the support that that company gave them over their training, and 94% of apprentices stay with that employer once they complete the program. Again, a way to enhance diversity, can also meet regulatory compliance. We'll talk about the Inflation Reduction Act. It's one example, but also certainly licensing. Often, especially in the construction trades, you may need to have, or an apprenticeship program can count towards the licensing requirements in many states. And then apprenticeships are also, can be a criteria for receiving other financial incentives and like the technical support that we have to help people. So there's funding available that is earmarked for apprenticeship programs. And there is, as we'll talk about, some financial tax incentives for those employers to use apprentices in building those projects. So that leads to the big one in the clean energy industry right now. It's driving an incredible interest in registered apprenticeships. Is the Inflation Reduction Act. If you're not aware, the Inflation Reduction Act is the largest climate policy this country has passed. Literally billions of dollars of investment from the federal government is stimulating trillions of dollars of investment of the private capital based on this bill. The bill has, it's one of the first that has really strong labor provisions in terms of both apprenticeships and prevailing wage. So to get the tax credits, the vast majority of the tax incentives that are within the Inflation Reduction Act all reference the same section of the act that refers to these apprenticeships and prevailing wage requirements. I'm not going to get as much in the prevailing wage, but every employee, so basically it starts at 6%. If we look at the investment tax credit, they can get a base tax credit of 6% of the project cost if they don't care about the labor provisions. But they can get 30% of the project costs paid for by the federal, through a tax credit if they use registered apprentices to build that project, and they pay everyone on that project prevailing wage rates. So there is a large financial incentive to the industry, and this is across the board. I'll mention a few here, but that investment tax credit and the production tax credit, those are the big ones with regard to energy generation. So your solar projects, your wind projects. Wind is typically has been towards the production, and solar towards the investment. But they're all kind of, anyways, moving a little bit. But basically, you end up with, you can get 5 times the tax incentives if you use apprentices on your project than if you don't, depending on which one of the options are available. Things get a little more complicated in the efficiency world with the 179D credits or deductions, I should say. There's a more complex matrix of the cost there, but those energy efficiency credits have increased substantially, upwards of doubling or more the deductions that were previously available. And again, hinging on the use of those apprentices and paying prevailing wage. And this applies also to the electric vehicle charging infrastructure that's being built, and any of the other projects I don't mention here, but there's numerous other ones to look at carbon sequestration or hydrogen production and all kinds of other things that are tied to these same language. What that is that the labor hours starting in this year, 2024, 15% of all labor hours on the project need to be performed by a registered apprentice in order to get those, again, 5 times the credit value of your base credits. The participation requirement is that every contractor and subcontractor has to have at least one apprentice if they have at least 4 or more employees on that job, working on that job. So if you have a sole source contractor comes in or has 1 or 2 people, which is not very often on these bigger projects that you'd have a company that small doing this work. So nearly every contractor and subcontractor in the industry right now is looking for an apprenticeship program to participate in. Again, this is the larger scale projects. This is 1 megawatt and up. But there's a huge need for this training for apprenticeship programs to meet these industry requirements. And as we said, literally billions of dollars of private capital are on the line getting those tax credits. So the other thing, ratio requirements. So an apprenticeship program will have a ratio requirement of apprentice to a journey person or a skilled mentor. Those need to be maintained. And again, the prevailing wages need to be paid to everybody, but the apprentices can be paid the wage that is in their apprenticeship schedule. So, first year apprentices, typically make, I don't know, roughly 60, 70%, sometimes lower than that. Depends on the program, how long it is, but then they advance up towards the prevailing wage, obviously, when they complete the program. Now, yeah, as I said, these are for the larger projects, the kind of commercial and utility scale, and the efficiency deductions. It's to any commercial property, so it can be smaller projects. If it's a commercial building at all, then it fits. If it's a commercial entity you're dealing with rather than a personal individual, personal residential type work. So commercial energy efficiency projects, and then on every other project, it's 1 megawatt and up. And 1 megawatt's like a large, a modest size warehouse or kind of large building. Not sure exactly what it is in acreage, but 1 megawatt would be a kind of a warehouse type of facility, and up into your community solar might be a handful of megawatts, and the larger projects, large solar projects, and large wind projects get up into the hundreds of megawatts in some of them. And the Inflation Reduction Act specifies that it is the manual laborers, it's the laborers and mechanics, is what it specifically says, that are performed. All the regulations kind of clarify that more, but it is that hands-on manual labor. While you can certainly use apprenticeship programs, the industry is growing, as we talked about. Apprentices can be used in all kinds of occupations. The actual requirements are for the manual labor. So here we're talking about those skilled trades, the electricians, your laborers, carpenters, and some other occupations like that. Anyone doing that hands-on work, using tools, operating equipment, those are the people that are going to have to be apprentices. It excludes the supervisors, the foremen, and kind of any of the management of the projects. Those don't count as kind of the labor hours, or any kind of professional services, the engineering and the things like that. Accounting, human resources, all that stuff doesn't fit into these requirements. Is really just that manual labor. So that defines the occupations then that are going to be in demand for apprenticeship programs. Important to note. So there are a couple of tools so you can track and see, okay, is this Inflation Reduction Act stimulating projects near me? Are there employers that need these apprenticeship training programs that we can partner with? One of the things too we haven't mentioned too much is the manufacturing of these components too. There aren't actually apprenticeship requirements on the manufacturing side of things, but there's a lot of jobs being created there, and apprenticeships can be certainly used in manufacturing too. Lots of these investments here. You go to these tracking places, you can zoom in on your location and see what projects are being proposed and announced. Obviously, paying attention to your local newspapers and things like that too will tell you that. But you can zoom in and see what types of plants are being built. These are, a lot of these are manufacturing plants. Those are going to be good, stable jobs that are going to be needed in a local place. The construction of these projects, more the labor is often in a very remote location, and harder to have a permanent job. It's going to be more construction job for a handful of months, maybe a year or more, depending on the project. And then they're going to have to move on to another location. But still, hundreds of jobs, for that time during those projects. And they have to have apprenticeship program trainings to get these tax incentives. So some useful tools there. The other thing, like I said, we're working with these trade associations. I know SIA in particular has a great tool, a couple of good tools for locating employers that are in the industry. Actually, the National Solar Database is tracking all solar companies, energy storage and other related companies in the industry, whether they're members or not, but certainly then, membership directories are a great place to identify. And SIA operates as a national organization, but they have local affiliate chapters in a lot of states, and there's other similar organizations that aren't necessarily affiliated with SIA, but that operate in some of the other states. So these trade associations are just a really great way to identify the employers in the area, even just browsing their member directory or looking at their last conference and seeing who was presenting, who was exhibiting. That gives you an idea of those employers in the area. And again, a lot of these there's some local organizations too. This is the national level, but there's a Florida Solar Energy Association, and there's a Texas Renewable Energy Association, et cetera. So, and as we said, the Home Performance Association we're working with, and there are others in the wind sector and others as well. So, one important thing to note, apprenticeships, I think there's a common myth that apprenticeships, especially in the construction industry, are only, done through unions. That is certainly where a lot of them are, but there's really a variety of options on how to run an apprenticeship program. At the heart of it, you have to have an employer and you have to have a training provider. And that employer can be the training provider. They can do it all in-house. They can choose to do that path. They can join, an employer can join a group of other employers in a group sponsored program. And sometimes these are often sponsored. So the sponsor of the program is the one who is responsible for registering the apprentices with the Department of Labor, submitting that paperwork when they register, when they complete the program, tracking their progress. It's the administration of the program, the operations of it. That's the program sponsor. There's options for, the union. It's actually it's not quite proper to call it a union program. They're called joint programs in most places. It's a joint agreement between the labor union and the management association, typically, or just the employers that are using those workers. And so that's a joint labor management program is one where there's a union involved, and then the employers are involved, and they jointly create the program and manage that program through a committee typically. But you can have other group sponsored programs that aren't necessarily affiliated with a union. These are often run by educational institutions like community colleges, but they can be run by workforce boards or nonprofits or other groups. Trade associations are a common vehicle for that, or employer consortiums. So examples there you have are like the Independent Electrical Contractors Association, or some of these other contractor associations. They might jointly sponsor a program for their members. And again, often educational institutions sponsor because then they provide the related instruction component. They help track the student's progression through that piece already, and then just bring the employers on board to and give them the tools to track their on-the-job training. And then the employer sponsor is where the employer says, I'm going to manage this program myself. They still need an instruction provider. They can do that in-house, or they can contract that. They can have agreements with multiple training providers. So often you might find an in-house program with an employer. They may choose to have a handful of courses that are delivered at the community college or local technical high school in some particular areas, and then they might find some safety training from somebody else, a contract trainer that does that. And then they might incorporate some manufacturer training into that to learn about the particular equipment that they're installing and maintaining. So they can kind of customize what that related instruction looks like. And again, look to the institutions like yourself to understand what they're offering, what's available, and see what their needs are. So there are steps. First, as we said, it starts with the occupation. What are you training somebody? That's going to define, what types of classes they need, how long the program's going to be, what they need to learn on the job. You select the program sponsors. We said there's a couple options for that. Educational institutions can become the sponsor and then attract employers to sign on to their program. And then, there's other options here of your work process schedule. So what that is, what are they learning on the job? That training plan, what are the courses that they're taking? The program sponsor needs to figure out those aspects of the program and then get that approved again by the Department of Labor. Other program requirements, policies we'll look at really briefly, but that's what we're here to help with. Is this whole process of identifying the occupations, navigating this pathway, and then ultimately recruiting those apprentices. So we can help, and that's often where colleges and other educational institutions can come in as well. As Joel kicked us off here, said that recruitment is often a thing that educational institutions are concerned about as well, and apprenticeships are a great way to that help meet that recruitment needs of employers and training providers at the same time. So just to close up here, a couple slides, starts with that apprenticeable occupation. We've talked about, so here's a little bit of the criteria for determining if it's an apprenticeable occupation. The occupation has to be approved by the Department of Labor or the state agency in some cases. About half the states operate the apprenticeship system at the state level by an authorized state apprenticeship agency, and about half the states just utilize the federal government, Department of Labor's Office of Apprenticeship. But they all generally use the same criteria. This is the federal criteria that all the states need to basically follow. So, it starts off, again, as we said, and again, it's similar to the college degree. It's commonly recognized throughout an industry. We know what it means when somebody graduates from college with a degree in whatever it is. That degree could be in engineering, could be in some science, could be in literature. Everybody has kind of a common understanding of what that person learned during their training program, and apprenticeships are the same. When we say, oh, you're an electrician, or oh, you're a laborer, or any of these other occupations, even a nurse now, or a teacher can be trained through an apprenticeship program. We know that what that means when they've completed that program, and it's commonly recognized across the industry that to become an electrician or to become a cybersecurity professional, that it takes a certain amount of training in a certain type of subject and such. And so that's what it starts with, is that common understanding of what that occupation is across an industry, and a common recognition of what generally is going to be needed to prepare somebody to work in that field for their career. Apprenticeships are, again, the starting point for a career, learning on that on the job. And they have to be at least 1 year. So an apprenticeable occupation is one that does take some time to learn, at least 1 year on the job. So example, being a burger flipper at a fast food restaurant is not really an apprenticeable occupation. You can learn that job in less than a year. Potentially being a store manager or somebody like that might be an occupation that takes longer to learn. But a chef, executive chef, is an apprenticeable occupation. That is, to be able to run a kitchen, things like that, take a lot longer to learn. And so that is an apprenticeable occupation. And again, for each year, you do have to have at least 144 hours of training. So here's some example occupations. There's a whole list. Again, if you go to Department of Labor, I think got a link on one of these slides. You can look at each of these occupations. You can search for different occupations, and a lot of times you need to kind of find an occupation to use in order to train somebody. So they're flexible. You'll go on here, the occupations, each one of these will have a basic template around it. So here's some examples in the solar and storage industry. Certainly electricians are greatly needed, and there's a variety of electricians as well. So you can train your standard inside wire person is what generally is called an electrician, but there are residential electrician programs that just focus on the residential sector that can be done in shorter time. There's ones that focus on the substations and kind of the distribution system that takes about 3 years. There's line workers that are more installing and maintaining those the distribution wires and transmission wires. So there's a variety of different electricians as well. The laborer is probably the most in demand, is the most in demand occupation to build these projects. They're also otherwise known as assemblers and installers, and this is kind of where the solar installer job fits. Department of Labor is not going to recognize solar installer as a specific sub occupation at this point, but we can use these other occupations to train solar installers. So if they're doing just kind of that manual labor, the mechanical installation, they're going to be in the laborer. But if they're doing, again, some of this, certainly electricians and other more highly skilled work, they'll need to be in one of these other classifications. Energy efficiency, here's a few examples. You've got your weatherization technician, that's the home performance laborer. Energy auditor is an approved occupation. You've got some of the skilled trades like insulators and carpenters and HVAC technicians. Certainly electrician fits in here as well. There's many more occupations that certainly fit within any of these categories. We've got a little resource on our website about the different occupations and roles and examples. Wind energy has the wind turbine technician, and certainly again would use electrician. Crane operator is a big one in the wind turbine construction business. So each of those sectors, electric vehicles, you've got the people that are just automotive technicians. They're the ones that are going to be maintaining those vehicles. The charging systems are being installed by electricians. So you kind of need to look at each of those skills for where they're doing. Like I said, about half the states operate through the federal office, and there's the link to the apprenticeable occupations. You want to look in there. When we work to register programs, you have to create the standard. The standard says, here's what's going to be taught, here's how long it's going to take, here's the classes you need to take, all of that stuff. In about half the states, you register those and you work with your state agency. They may have some state-specific requirements around things like ratios of apprentices to journey workers, aspects of minimum wage that needs to be paid in that state. So your apprenticeship wage has to be at least that minimum wage. Things like that might vary at the state. So the term we haven't talked about. So most apprenticeship programs traditionally have been time-based, and we've been talking about it more of a time-based category, but there's a growing, there's a push towards competency-based apprenticeship systems, which is where rather than saying, okay, you just need to work, with this person for 1 year or 2 years, whatever it is, they say, actually, to complete this program, you need to show us that you can do these tasks. And then, there's a certain set of tasks that they have to complete to move up to the next step and show that they know how to do, not just complete them. And then hybrid programs are kind of a combination of the two. It still has a time-based component, but then does also incorporate that, hey, but you got to verify to us that you've actually learned what you needed to do during that time. So that's a hybrid component. There's, it gets into some details. A lot of this is template, boilerplate language in some of this stuff, but others, do need to work out like the wage schedule. You need to determine what, the sponsor, what the wages are going to be at each of those steps and things like that. We've got a toolkit on our website, kind of goes into detail on each one of these things a little more. And again, we can help employers and others set up programs and work through all of these. And here's a link to our website, the ACE Network, and you can learn more. If you are interested in developing a program, connecting with employers, getting some technical assistance from us to do, help navigate any of this process, understand the curriculum guidelines and standards and how to fit your program into those, we're here to help. So thank you. And actually, yeah, turn it back over to Joel. So Joel has been, as you said, was an apprentice, but is now also training apprentices through the electrical program. So excited to learn a little bit more about your program there, Joel.
Well, we just have a few minutes left, so I won't take up too much time. Rich did a great job of explaining, I think, the sort of the world of apprenticeship and some of the issues that come up there. I have, knowledge about our specific situation here in Wisconsin and at Madison Area Technical College. We have both union and non-union electrical apprenticeship programs that where the related training is taught at the community college. The programs, both union and non-union, as Rich mentioned, are these partnerships with employers and or a committee of employers, employee representatives from the industry working with the community college as long with the state agency overseeing apprenticeship as sort of like the three legs of the stool. Wisconsin being one of those states that has its own standards rather than using the federal standards. So it's a program that has been in place for a long time. I think the apprenticeship program started in Wisconsin before the federal standards were set up, and it has worked, as Rich mentioned, right, to help train individuals who have need of sort of like these rich set of skills to do certain type of work. It's worked a long time for that. The industry changes and the training needs to change along with it, which sometimes is, it needs a little push in order to do. And that's one of the things that I think is interesting to contemplate with renewable energy, clean energy, is that the demands of what is needed for the industry are different and continually evolving, rapidly evolving. So we'll see how that plays out in terms of the demand for apprenticeships in clean energy, which I will give you a question maybe to prompt or give people time to think about what questions they have for you, Rich. What sort of interest are you getting from, or inquiries to the ACE network for help? Are you getting inquiries from employers, from community colleges, from community organizations? What are you seeing?
Yeah, all across the board. And as part of the network, as you saw, the network, we've got groups like Create and the HBCU Clean Energy Initiative that are connecting us with the educational providers. And so, helping to, make those groups aware of the opportunities for the apprenticeship training and the need for it in the industry currently. Definitely a lot of outreach to employers, that you have to have the employer to do this, and they're the ones that are on the hook. And then certainly others, nonprofits, mostly that's on the recruitment side of the people looking, a lot of the job training organizations looking for getting people into careers. So it really is partnerships between those groups that work best. And ultimately it is, each one is kind of unique in terms of what their needs are. But I will say that a lot of the employers we talk to, they are looking for programs to join. They are looking for training providers to deliver that training. They are not, they do their business of installing and maintaining or whatever that is. They are not training providers, right? They are not. They don't have they don't have interest in managing and running these programs, right? They want to join a program, be given the structure. Now, that said, though, that program needs to work for them. So, for example, we're talking to a group, a company, they're looking at a laborer program to join. And when you look at that occupation, well, in this program in particular, it includes a lot of work on environmental remediation and hazardous waste cleanup and things like that. That is a part of what a laborer is supposed to be able to do. But that employer can't give that job experience. They don't do that work. So, you know, they've got to figure that out. You've got to be able to, you know, while you may have a program, you need to make sure that program's aligned with the employer's needs too, and that they can do that, and that the related training is, you know, they may be able to take a class in hazardous waste management, right? That's fine. It's good to be aware of that type of thing. You know, this is just an example. You'll see it in other areas too. Look at a solar electrician. If they're only installing solar systems, it's difficult for them to get experience in industrial motors and controls, you know, or things like that, lighting systems. You know, they may be able to do that in certain aspects, but you know, there's lots of that stuff to work out, and that's where, you know, the conversations happen between the training providers and the program sponsors, and to make sure it's all, you know, works for all parties.
Great. Are there other questions for Rich? We wrap things up here.
I just had a quick question, and you kind of touched on this, Rich, relative to the focus of the IRA program being on the kind of more labor side of things. But what do you think the trends are, or the opportunities for? In my case, I teach architecture and like building energy modeling, so more on the engineering side. Are there opportunities for apprentices developing there?
Yeah, absolutely. And the energy auditor is an occupation that is approved. It's a 2-year program. It definitely, you know, gets into that energy modeling work, and analyzing building loads. And we've got a good example. One of the first in the country was Lane Community College, if you're familiar with that program.
Yeah.
Out in Oregon. It's a good one to look at. They've got a good model for that. But it is a new occupation that's been recognized, so there aren't a lot of programs in that area yet. But it is approved, so it's certainly potential. You know, for those occupations that are not being mandated by the Inflation Reduction Act, or well, you know, to get the extra incentives, well, it's the challenges are the same in any other industries. Convincing the employer that, hey, you need to train these people and you need to do it in a comprehensive manner. And that's you know, you can train in a wide variety of occupations here. It's the issue is, are they ready to commit to that for those jobs? Do they see the skills gap? You know, where we really see it is where there's a skills shortage, where they like, hey, I can't find anybody doing this work, you know, that knows anything close to what I need them to know. That's when you really get to the employer saying, hey, I guess I've really got to do it myself, because they're just not out there, right? So.
Other questions for Rich?
I would jump in with a question just really quickly. When it comes to training that might happen in conjunction with a high school, are there difficulties that I run into sometimes because many of the participants would then be under 18? And how does that work in terms of, you know, working on job sites and that sort of thing?
Yeah, great question. And an important point that I left out in the presentation is pre-apprenticeship programs, and we are doing some work there too. So that is often where a high school would come in, is what's called a pre-apprenticeship. And there's a lot of community associations and others doing sort of workplace or you know, career counseling and workforce development topics, is in the pre-apprenticeship space of getting people ready to an apprenticeship. So as we said, apprenticeship it's a commitment. It's a multi-year commitment by that job seeker as well. And similar to applying to a college program, many of these apprenticeship programs, particularly you know those joint labor union ones, they're very competitive to get into. And so often high schools are involved in more of a pre-apprenticeship, preparing somebody to enter one. You can be an apprentice down to 16. I mean, you can be an employee. It is possible to do. There's youth apprenticeships. There's a whole, there is another intermediary that, and there are lots of resources around this topic. I will say I've not delved into it specifically myself to know some of those challenges, but I know there's a lot of good resources out there. There's some other intermediaries that are really just focused. The Urban Institute they have a program on youth apprenticeships. So they've got a lot of resources on that. But yeah, you can do it. They can. There's definitely lots of examples with high schools where, you know, they'll go to school during the day, then they'll go work in the afternoon with the employer, or things like that. And can certainly be an apprentice at the time. I think federal regulations is 16 on the. But you do get into some, you know, liability issues and things on some stuff, but it's just has to be worked out what the occupation is and what the employer's you know, comfortable with and things like that.
Thank you.
Well, we are after our hour-long time, so I want to be respectful of people's time and thank Rich for this presentation. I'm sure you can reach out to him and he would be happy to answer any additional questions. And I don't know if he's willing to hang around if people have questions after we end here, but thank you very much, Rich. This has been a great presentation and appreciate all of you being part of it.
Great, thank you. And yeah, happy to stay on for a couple minutes if anybody has a question now, but happy to talk at any point. So just reach out.
Well, thank you. It was just very informative. Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank you.
It was.
I
Thank
learned a
you.
lot, Rich.
Great.
Same here. Have a good
Hey, Rich.
weekend.
Yep. Chris, I will reach out with you later in the week on
Great.
the about what we're doing over at Heartland. So I'll try to get Kurt on and we'll talk to you again real soon.
Great. Yeah, thanks.